This is Henrik Beschman. I'm a software developer in Toronto, Canada. My website is internetcommons.ca, and this is the fourth screencast in a series that I call What is Drupal, in which I put forward the proposition that a concrete way of looking at Drupal is to think of it in terms of these 5 key properties: a resource manager, a configuration manager, a content manager, a state change machine, and a rapid application development tool. In this screencast, I'll be continuing my look at the database, and in particular Drupal's concept of entities. Last screencast I was looking at a particular node or piece of content that was being presented with the website that I'm using here for demonstration purposes. Just my own website, vegetablediet.ca, but a particular way of eating. But so in the recipe section, there is a curried fish soup recipe that has 3 pictures attached to it, and I was tracing how Drupal handles that. In terms of the content administration, content administrator simply uploads 3 pictures or any number of pictures that he or she wants to associate those pictures or images with this particular node, and that is enabled through the configuration of this content type called stack item, which has, among other things, a field in it called image, and that field is configured to have any number of values. So the way Drupal deals with that is to create a separate table for those images. So let's trace that through. So here, first of all, is the node table, which has the basic information for the nodes, or basic pieces of content. So there at the bottom is the batch curried fish soup, which is node number 18. And again, just to review that this table has mostly fields that are used internally for reference and identification purposes. The table does have a title field, what Drupal calls a property, and also a comment field, but it does not have a body field or that image field. And so the way the image field is dealt with is that Drupal actually creates a separate table called field data field image, which holds image information from any number of entities. Could be nodes, could be some other type of entity, a commerce line item or something like that, commerce product. So Drupal holds information about images from all kinds of entities in this location in a table called field data field image. And that table, as you can see, has reference information so that Drupal can refer records here back to the entities that they're associated with. So the entity type, which in this case is a node, the entity bundle, it's called, which in this case is a stack item, and of course the entity ID, which as we saw was 18. Now you'll see here that node entity 18 has 3 records, and that is where we get the information for the three images that are associated with this particular node. You'll see that the delta column here has three values, 0, 1, and 2. Drupal takes care of keeping these in sequential order, 0, 0, 1, and 2. So if record number 1 was deleted, then delta 2 would be renumbered to 1, so it would be 0, 1. If we look at the structure of this, we'll see that the entity type bundle and entity ID are three fields that exist in this particular table, but also revision ID, whether it's deleted or not, and language information as well as delta information. So these are all common fields for any field type table. And in fact, if we look at the index structure for this table, we'll see that 5 of these things, entity type, entity ID, deleted, delta, and language, all combine to make the primary key, which means that any of them could vary, so that an entity ID might have a number of entries for different languages if that particular language translation scheme is chosen by the site builder. As we've seen, delta can be used to have any number of entries for that particular field, and so on. So it deals with languages, it deals with multiple entries per field. It's quite a flexible system. Also of note is that the body field of the node entity also has an entity table. So again, here is entity ID 18, which is the particular node that we were talking about, and there's the beginning of the body and of the summary, I believe, with other information. So the body field for a node also is kept in a separate entity table. So if we look at the entity concept here, the entity type is the sort of logical abstraction of the entity. So in this case it would be node. You might have product type or something like that, and really consists of the base table. So in that case that would be the node table, which would really represent the entity type. And the entity field, or an entity field, of which there can be any number associated with an entity type, is represented as a separate table, as we've seen, such as the image field. And then there's a concept of an entity bundle, which in the case of a node can be, in terms of items that have actually been instantiated, could be a stack item or a page, or really any node type or content type. The concept of an entity bundle is a subset of the entity that includes not just data from the base table, but also data from the field tables that are configured for that particular bundle. So going back to this configuration, a stack item is a bundle which consists of these particular fields, or as we've seen, title is not actually a field, it's a property for this, but in any case consists of these packages of data, whereas other types such as basic page could have a completely different set of fields. In this case it happens to have the same set of fields, but it could have a different set of fields. So an entity bundle is simply the collection of fields that are associated with a particular type. Now an entity instance is the collection of data that is managed by Drupal. So what I've actually done here is added a hook with some debug code to present the structure of a node when it is loaded by Drupal. And the result of that is this presentation here. And so what you can see here is the data from the node table assembled together with the data from the field image table and the body table into one memory object that's basically a PHP object, which is then made available to the various modules for processing and eventually presentation to the user. So essentially what Drupal does is it manages the assembly of the entity components transparently for the website builder and even the website developer. So really the type of detail that I'm talking about doesn't have to be addressed or managed directly by site builders or site developers. It's managed through the configuration interface, which we'll get into in the next screencast. So you can see here that if we expand the field image part of this data structure, that the language setting for this particular field image is set as undefined, since we're not using value. And then within that undefined language space, you can see that there are a couple of records, a couple of images associated with this particular page, which happens to be the home page. So just for consistency, let's go to this actual recipe item that we were looking at, which is the curried fish soup, which has 3 pictures associated with it. And so here you can see in the memory structure that the field image now has 3 items associated with it. There's the first item, there's the file name of the second item, and there's the file name of the third item. So Drupal takes care of all this management of reading the database, assembling data associated with these logical entities and entity bundles into memory objects, which can then be transformed One of the things to note is that this has already been transformed. There's a display suite property added already to this memory structure. There's an RDF mapping, which is another module. So the process of memory transformation has already taken place. That will continue. Loading the data is the first step. The ongoing state change processes that Drupal goes through as information is being presented to the user will eventually involve taking this data and putting it into what are called renderable arrays, or structures that other functions within Drupal understands in terms of being able to transform the data and merge it into HTML templates. But I'll get into that later. So fundamentally, the process is for the data to be stored in the database in a kind of fragmented but coherent form through this entity scheme, and then loaded into memory as it's required into this data structure, which eventually is mapped and transformed into this presentation structure, which is given to the user as a straightforward web space. So in the next screencast, I'm going to talk about how Drupal essentially hides a lot of this complexity for the user and takes advantage of the sophistication of the database by offering configuration, a quite sophisticated configuration interface to the site builder. So this is Henrik Bushman at internetcommons.ca.